the Department of Civil Engineering of Sir MVIT. It is an honor to welcome all faculty participants for the third day of our FDP on sustainable construction material practice and technology. And today's topic is exploring career options in sustainability, organized by Department of Civil Engineering, Sir MVIT. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to extend a warm welcome to our guest speaker, Anupama ma'am. Welcome you, ma'am. Now, I request Dr. Ravi Kumar sir, HOD, Department of Civil Engineering, to welcome the gathering.
A very good morning to one and all who are present on the third day of Faculty Development Program on Sustainable Construction Materials, Practices and Technologies. As we have discussed already for these 2 days, as the world increasing concern with environment impact is imperative for us as educators, as teachers, stay at par with the latest advancement in sustainable construction. Through this program, we'll try to explore innovative materials, practices, and technologies that not only minimizes environmental footprint but also enhance the longevity and durability of our industry and environment. Let us dwell into the critical topics together, empowering ourselves to lead the way towards a more sustainable future in construction. Today we are going to have a session, still two sessions were about the materials, about the ram dirt, as well as the bamboo. But today we'll be talking a session on exploring career options in sustainability by MS Anupama, who was our alumni. Now I request Dr. Shivana sir to introduce the speaker of the day, Anupama. Sir, over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I am happy and delighted to introduce Ms. Anupama VS. Anupama VS is a manager at strategic partnerships at GIST Impact. From the time she graduated in civil engineering from Sir M. Visvesvaraya Institute of Technology in the year 2016, she has explored sustainability as a professional choice in many forms. She has worked for an NGO in lake restoration and urban forestry in Bangalore for a small period of time. Later, she joined and completed master's degree at Center for Environmental Planning and Technology, University, Ahmedabad. During her master's degree, she worked on climate-sensitive infrastructure planning, on city-wide water supply and sanitation, and climate change adaptation projects via government advisory. At present, she is helping corporates and investors to quantify the environmental impact of businesses and help transition to low carbon pathway. Anupama's long-time interest in the intersection of environmental law and citizen action made her to pursue a PG diploma in environmental law from National Law School, Bangalore recently. Outside her professional work, Anupama is a staunch believer of community volunteering. Through her upcoming move to reside in Bangalore, she hopes to put all her skills to use in saving lakes and trees in the city, Bangalore. Thank you, Anupama, for accepting our invitation to deliver a lecture on career options in sustainability. I hope everybody will enjoy the session. And over to you, Anupama.
Thank you so much, sir. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. First of all, it is my pleasure and my honor to be, helping in any way possible for my dear alumni, MVIT. Um, Civil engineering especially has been such a foundational course for me to then decide what more to do in the future and also pursue many opportunities that I'm a part of today. So, when Shivana sir called me recently and asked if I could do this, my immediate answer was yes, because civil engineering department has been so supportive to me throughout the time I studied there, in even accepting, moving away from the traditional civil engineering, career to a little more niche in sustainability, and always supporting and always, reaching out in all ways possible. So first of all, a big thank you from my end for giving me this opportunity. Secondly, a warm welcome to everyone. More than a one-way session, more than a workshop or more than a lecture, I want to make this as a conversation. So, before we go in, if possible, please do switch on your videos. I'd love to see all your faces. It's nicer to talk to people than to talk to a blank screen. So, if possible, please do that. And secondly, feel free to unmute yourself, share your thoughts, ask questions, or even share anything that you've read recently that you want to tell everyone about. So, make this a free-flowing conversation. It's not at all any restrictive. So with those two house rules, I'll maybe begin the presentation, and feel free to let me know if you want me to clarify anything or if you want me to repeat anything. More than happy to do that. I'll start sharing my screen. Please let me know if there is any challenges with that. Anita ma'am, is it okay if I do the presentation?
Yeah, sure. I'll stop my screen.
Thank you.
You can share them.
Thank you, ma'am. I hope you're able to see a presentation right now. Let me know a yes or a no, and then I'll continue.
Yes, we can see.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you. Great. I know that you have learned about the materials, like how Ravi Kumar sir was saying just now. You've learned about bamboo, you've learned about rammed earth, and tomorrow you'll be learning in a larger scale about net strategies, net zero strategies. So I think this is the perfect segue as an intermediate session between those two to have a great understanding about the materials and the alternative building materials that you can use in your construction technologies and construction management, but also think a little bit about larger scale. If you want to make that building a net zero building, what will be the calculations? What will be the building materials used? What should be the time horizon period? What should be the offsets that you should consider? If you also want to look at net zero in a city level, not just a building or a site level, then what sort of possibilities are there? So hopefully today's session can cover about what role you can play as a civil engineering graduate or a civil engineering professional in sort of becoming more sustainable in your career, but also helping the environment, which is the need, as rightly mentioned by Ravi Kumar sir today morning. With that, there are three main pillars I want to talk about today. First, we'll be looking at the various pathways that you can choose, right? You've done your studying, you know what you want to do, but there are several paths in front of you that you can be a little confused about, or you would want to know a little more information before you make a choice. So I want to talk about the different pathways that's in front of you. There is, of course, the traditional path of going forward with your career, but there are different alternatives that you can choose as well in maybe designing only green buildings or looking at infrastructure in a very sustainable manner, or even sort of going a little away from the industry and getting into private companies or corporates and advising them on how to become more sustainable and thereby help the world. So they are the different pathways that we can explore together. Secondly, um, I think at the end of the day, it is very important to step back and look at what is the scale of impact you're having. Is it site level, because you're building a certain material and there are impacts in that site itself. So is it that local area level, or is it city level because you may want to sort of expand your scale, look at urban planning or large scale water supply and sanitation systems, or even dam constructions that you've definitely studied as part of the civil engineering syllabus. You can also look at national level, which is policy or laws, or even state level initiatives, or certain programs. There are national level programs called Swachh Bharat Mission that you are aware of. There is also Smart Cities Mission. So you can see if that is also the scale that you might want to work and explore in. And lastly, there is of course the international level. There are United Nations, different organizations, right? There is something called Sustainable Development Solutions Network by United Nations. There's Sustainable Development Goals. Then there are larger conversations about climate change, about the international conferences like COP or Montreal Protocol or any other biodiversity protocol that are there. So there's different levels of impact that you can also take a step back and assess if that is the level of interest that you might want to have. And lastly, I think, of course, the question boils down to fine, I'm interested in sustainability. This is the level of impact I want to have, but where do I get a job in this? And what should I look for? And what can be the first place that I sort of Google and maybe do a job application? So that's the three main pillars I'd love to discuss with you guys today. Um, and would love to hear your thoughts as well. So again, encouraging everyone to keep it as interactive as possible. Before we dive in, I think I want to do a vibe check, and this we can do by using phones that you might have. So feel free to whip out the phones that you have. Open menti.com on your phone. It will ask you to enter a code, and you can enter the code, the 8-digit code that's on the screen right now. There are two simple questions there that I would love to get your responses on. So if you can please do that, that'll be helpful in sort of setting the tone for the entire presentation. Let me know if there's any difficulty in opening the link. I'll also start sharing the screen on the responses as well. Are you all able to open the link? Type menti.com on your phone and input the code that you're seeing on the top bar, 77637697. Okay, we have one answer. Love to see all 67 attendees input if possible.
Anupama,
Yes,
your,
sir.
your slide sharing, no, it should be in presentation mode. It is in slide sharing, it is there.
Okay.
So that bigger slides will be visible if you put on presentation mode.
Sure, sir. I'll do that next. Thank you. We have 4 responses in total. Maybe we can spend 2 more minutes. Maybe we can get at least 20 responses, and that will be 1/3 of the attendees today. There's no compulsion. You can say a no as well if sustainability is not your career choice. So feel free to be as candid and transparent as possible. Maybe one more minute before we go to the next question. Okay, so we do have 8 responses. If you're still logging in and trying to input your answers, that's completely okay. I'll go to the next question just in the interest of time. The next is maybe only for the 6 people here who've said yes, as a career in sustainability is something that they're interested in. If you said yes, which is the 6 people who responded so far, what is the role that you think you will work as a sustainability professional? It's an open question, it's an open answer. There's no choice, there's no correct or wrong answers. So input anything that you think is a role that you would love to sort of start your career in. Okay, we have one answer or one response, if I should say. We can spend 2 minutes on this, so please feel free to share what you have in mind. Entrepreneur, that's very interesting. That's lovely. Super. Maybe we can pause the responses now, just to respect everyone's time. There are quite a few interesting responses: eco-friendly concrete, environmental consultant, entrepreneur, manager, environmental advisor, green concrete, and production. Production, I'm assuming material production in eco-friendly way. These are really, really interesting options. And one thing I can say, having worked for more than 5 years now in this field, there are multiple options for all of these roles. So definitely there are quite a few opportunities that you can explore. I'll go back to the presentation to see how each of these roles can actually help in helping the environment, but also sort of progressing in your career. So I'll go back to the slides now and put in presentation more like Shivana sir suggested. Is this better, sir?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, thank you for the responses. Some of you think you have considered a career in sustainability, and there are some roles you have in mind. So, we can start off with what is the traditional path that a civil engineering graduate has in front of them as to what they can do next, how that can actually help, and some of the other non-conventional roles that can fit into the entrepreneur, the environmental advisor, and green concrete options that everybody suggested today. There are different pathways, of course, but I've tried to concise it into the top three pathways that can be in front of you. As a civil engineering graduate, you could either continue being in that business and turn a little bit towards environmental engineering. Of course, it was one of the third year or fourth year syllabus that was part of the study that you would have done. So you will know what sort of environmental problems you can solve with that. And green concrete falls very much right under this. Using bamboo as a construction material or ram dirt as a construction material, that definitely qualifies as being an environmentally friendly civil engineer or environmentally friendly construction engineer. There are different ways that you can also incorporate that. There was, I think, an elective, I'm not sure if you took that, called alternative building materials, and Pradeepa ma'am had taught us that, and I had loved that subject because I was like, okay, apart from concrete, what can we use? And there was talk about fly ash, there was even other sorts of hybrid materials that you could use. There were even nature-based solutions where you are using organisms and organic, matter as construction materials. There is also a theory in architecture and also in engineering where you use light as a building material. It sounds a little, subjective, like how do you use light as a building material? But thinking about what is the direction of sun, what is the direction of the plot, is it not facing west facing? And you will know that east to west is where the sun goes. So if it is a warm area like Bangalore or India is, you can make sure that the smaller surface of the house is in the east to west and the longer surface is on the north to south, so that there's not a lot of heat and sunlight that enters. But if you're doing this in, say, a colder region, say UK or somewhere in Europe, you can do the exact opposite. So you can get the maximum sunlight into your house. So these are the sort of environmental friendly considerations you can use. There was also this subject that you also would have studied about soil quality and the strength of soil. So definitely some of the soil that is dug out for the construction can be reused with the right amount of reinforcements. So these are some of the, small changes, but can do a lot of impact when you consider conventional construction and civil engineering techniques. Secondly, you can go a little bigger in scale and look at water resource specialization. I mention this with a lot of respect because Shivana sir took us to an excursion in Bangalore to Karnataka State Natural Disaster Monitoring Center. It is near Yelahanka, and they do a lot of soil quality, land use, land cover, water resources, what is the water channels, what is the watershed, where does it get drained, um, how do you sort of use that in either planning your water systems or laying out the water network, and even help the municipalities with that. So this is something that you could, sort of use in your career as well. You would have also studied dam design, where you know what sort of water flows and settlements that you need to take into consideration. I think there is a question. Is Did someone raise your hand? I got a notification. All right. If there's anything you'd love to say, please feel free to unmute and share your thoughts. And I'll jump right back into the presentation. Like I was mentioning, there is also a consideration of going beyond the site level and looking at water resource planning, water resource management, and sort of become the water specialist as well. You would have studied water quality tests in your environmental lab as well. So all of those skills and all of those things that you've studied will sort of be put into use into that. There are several, career pathways that you can choose. Say, for example, in pollution control board, Karnataka Pollution Control Board, or even Central Pollution Control Board, where water quality, especially what is the COD, total nitrogen, total phosphorus, this total dissolved materials, dissolved solids, all of that get into the actual business of the job that is involved in that sort of career options. The third is, sort of looking at urban planning level. I am a little biased towards that because I studied that in my master's. But definitely, urban planning becomes more important to a developing country like India, where a lot of funding and lot of importance is given to smart city development or urban development, where we know that as a country we are moving a little more towards being urban, and there is a lot of migration from rural areas to urban areas, especially for jobs or especially for other resources. So it's very important to make sure that the cities that are expanding, especially in Bangalore, right? Like you see, there's more and more urban sprawl is the technical term they use. It's expanding the city limits. When Kempe Gowda sort of put all the city limits long ago, our city has sort of doubled in size, and you need to think of infrastructure services for them, and by that I mean water supply for them, or waste collection and waste management, or even roads, or even electricity lines, or even very simple things such as drainage systems. So all of this is very important when you look at city development, and then you can think of, okay, you don't want all the water to go sort of erode the soil. You want them to go collect in a proper drainage, and that can either get connected to a watershed area instead of sort of leaving it to the drains and sort of putting pressure on that, or you can make sure that there is enough green infrastructure around it to do the filtering, because there is definitely some amount of water pollution that would have happened. You want to filter that using natural solutions such as weeds or other purified plants that are organically found in the environment. You could think of that, or you could think of road map rationalization, which is where, and Bangalore is a little troublesome in that aspect, as you all are rightfully aware of. So you could think of how to make sure that the road rationalization is more easier for routes, so that there is less time spent on the roads, which would also lead to urban heat islands, as you might have known. Urban heat islands is where there are microclimatic conditions. You spend a lot of time in the traffic, your engines are on, that means you are emitting a lot of emissions. There is heat that is being produced by the engines in the cars or the buses or motor vehicles, and that would cause urban heat islands where the temperature on the road would be at least 2 or 3 degrees higher than the temperature inside a building nearby. So that's causing these microclimatic conditions where it disrupts the GHG emissions management or even the larger climate change problem that is in front of us. So these are the different categories you can today, being a civil engineering graduate, think of. Do I want to become environmentally friendly with my building materials, or do I want to look at natural resources where I look at water conservation, or do I want to look at the city itself that I'm a part of and help solve the solutions, sorry, help solve the problems that are part of the cities. I'll take a pause here. Is there any questions anyone has in mind? Anything you want to share? Anything you want to disagree on? Everything is welcome in this session. So, is there anything anyone wants to share? You agree with what I'm saying, or do you have different ideas? Okay, I'll take silence as an answer, as a no, that you're following and you agree, and I'll continue. But please feel free to unmute if you have any questions or anything you would like to share. Then there are some non-traditional, sort of unconventional ways that you can look at for your career options. And one would be sort of utilizing the energy. And the reason I've sort of focused on energy today is because in the larger world agenda, in the larger global discussions that are happening today, say if you take COP, for example, which happened in Dubai in November and December last year, COP28, their energy and fossil fuels was the biggest, discussion point there, because the Middle East, of course, has a lot of resources on the fossil fuels, but that also talks about pollution. If we completely rely on fossil fuels and coals, it will A, get exhausted, B, will pollute a lot about our environment. So it's important for us to move away from those conventional sources and look at solar energy or wind energy or even hydroelectric energy for that example. So sort of looking at energy in a sustainable manner is very, very important today more than ever in the history of the world. So first thing that maybe you could consider as a civil engineering graduate is learn a little bit more about solar energy projects. There are definitely site level considerations you could use for solar energies, but in larger scale, especially with the smart cities mission that is currently ongoing in India, solar panel construction, solar utilization for different energy consumption is picking up very, very well. You would have also learned about the electric cabs or the electric bikes that are there. So that definitely is an alternative form of energy that we will talk about. But at the building level or at the site level or at the city level, solar energy capitalizing is very, very important, and that is a possible route that you could consider. Very, very similar to solar energy, one can think about wind energy as well, because that again is renewable and it is reliable and also does not pollute the environment at all. So windmill design, where you will look at what should be the material used for the windmill. Of course, there are conventional concrete windmills as well, but you could think of alternative materials, maybe reusing some of the recyclable materials, using that to construct a windmill. Where should you locate that so that it does not come in the way of agriculture, it does not come in the way of city livelihoods or even migration, for that example? And what should be the shape of it? What should be the rotation speed of it? What should be the energy conversion once it is rotating at a certain RPM? These are the considerations you could use in your design thinking, in your design skills, and contribute towards renewable energy development in our country, especially when it is highly needed today. Then there is energy consultant, and I think somebody mentioned in the role that you would like to be a sustainability advisor. And sustainability energy consultant is very similar to that, where there are large scale developments that are happening. To give you an example from my personal experience, I was working very closely with the Vijayawada government in Andhra Pradesh. And as you know, they also have this new upcoming capital, Amravati. So when I was there in 2019 and 2020, they still did not have the infrastructure in Amravati. So most of their administrative offices were still in Vijayawada. So we were going to the offices there, but they had a lot of civil engineers, construction engineers, architects, and urban planners located in Amravati because they wanted to develop that and set it up so that the capital can be shifted. So that is where a sustainable energy consultant will be of much use, for example, where it is still in development. So you want to make sure that the energy you're producing is not completely from the fossil fuels or the electricity, but you are using alternatives like solar or wind. And there you sort of give your consulting and advisory services in how much megawatt hour energy do you want to produce, what is the demand, what is the supply, and in an emergency, what should be the alternative source. That sort of planning before a city is constructed. Very similarly, even in India, in Kochi actually, there is a large solar power plant, and that actually helps the airport also run. Even there is need for consultants into, okay, is this energy meeting the demand, or if there is surplus, how should that go back into the grid? And if that is being used by the citizens, how should that be priced? What should be the subsidy? And how can we give back in terms of the carbon offsets? So these are some of the various ways that you can think of career opportunities, especially in energy where we definitely need that. And the last one is of course like a culmination of all the three that I've listed here. It's just driving the force for renewable energy and renewable solutions and going away from the conventional resources because they are a little more exploiting in their natural resources, and also of course a little more polluting as well. Again, I'll take a pause here. Is there anything anyone wants to ask? Anything you want to share? Anything you've seen or you want to add to this? I definitely encourage everyone to unmute and share anything you have. Or just feel free to share your opinions. What do you think of what we are talking about right now? Do you have an alternative opinion? Do you agree with it? Do you think this is the need, or do you think no, this won't happen? This is not the conventional choice. I'd love to hear your opinion, and I'll take a pause until someone says anything, and then we can continue. Don't feel shy, or I mean, there's nothing wrong, or there's no wrong question actually. Um, so one last chance. Does anyone want to share anything? Okay. Going back to the presentation itself, there are two more things I would like to talk about in the pathways that are there in front of us. And I think green buildings is something that you are very, very familiar with. So I won't spend a lot of time on that. And you've already heard about it yesterday and day before yesterday. So it's of course using, I just saw the text. It's of course using alternative building materials that you've already learned about in the last 2 days, but also thinking about using a certification. There is something called LEED certification that you might be aware of. So when you construct a sustainable building, you can apply for it to be a LEED certified building, which is to say that it is in a sustainable site, it is constructed using sustainable materials, which is either you're using recycled materials or you're using less carbon intensive materials, or you are using solar energy for electricity, or you're employing rainwater harvesting in the building, or you're recycling the wastewater which comes out of the bathroom or the other sinks into gardening, um, or you are collecting the rainwater and using that instead of the municipal water, that sort of a thing. So there are various ways that you could apply for a LEED certification for a certain building. It sometimes is also about the waste. There are quite a few organic waste generation that happens in a building. What do you do about it? Do you have a site in the same building where you can recycle it, maybe do a garden pit and do composting about it? Or you recycle some of the paper and cardboard materials to some of the dealers like kabadi walas who can take it away, or you want to recycle some of the glass waste or construction and debris waste. How do you sort of reuse it into giving back to the earth and divert it from the landfill? So these are very, very important questions that you should consider when you're thinking about a site design. Most of the times, what happens is that there is a site, there is a certain drawing, or you have the measurements of the site. This is the number of floors, this is the number of rooms, this is the number of windows, that sort of a thing. But less thought goes into where is the concrete or where is the cement coming from. If there is a building already there and you're demolishing it, what happens to the construction and debris waste? If there is water supply being taken from the municipality or the water supply network, what happens to the wastewater? Where does it get connected? If when there is waste generated when people start living in that or using that building, what happens to the wet and dry waste? So it's very important to consider this right at the design phase, right at the construction phase, so that it sort of gets embedded throughout the life cycle of the building that we know. So that's of course thinking about the green building certification program. Net zero energy buildings is, I think, something you will learn a little more in the session tomorrow, because you'll learn about net zero strategies. But maybe spending a couple of minutes on that, it is where you make sure that the total impact of the building, which can be the total embodied energy, because I think cement has the highest embodied energy, so which is why something like bricks or something like locally available stone is much, much more environmentally friendlier than using cement and concrete and reinforcement. So what would happen to the total embodied energy based on the different building materials that you use is very, very important. And this again is very calculation heavy and modeling based approach, where you put a conventional building versus a non-conventional, sustainable or eco-friendly building and say what is the total impact of the building. Of course, it's very, very difficult to say the total impact of the building is zero and there is absolutely no negative impact. That's impossible. The best way to achieve it is, of course, reducing the impact as much as possible. That is, you reuse as much as possible. You do not use non-renewable resources for energy consumption, that sort of a thing, so that net is zero there. So there is, of course, negative impact because you are using a certain material, but you are also compensating it by employing some sustainable strategies, such as maybe timber can be reused, or you're using less concrete, or you're choosing not to plaster the walls because that also again asks for cement and it needs regular painting, whereas if you do exposed bricks, that would not require that and that might be more eco-friendly. So having these A versus B versus C sort of choices will help you understand which is the most net zero building, which consumes least energy, has least impact on the environment, and is more friendly in terms of nature. That would be also a good way of comparing and giving advisory, especially to say construction companies or to a large site operations company, that sort of a thing. But you know a lot more about this, so I will move to the last set, which is more about corporate sustainability advisory. I come from this world currently because my current job is where I speak to a lot of companies. Let's take a very practical example. Let's take Swiggy, and Swiggy delivers food to houses, and they have their own set of employees who are mapped to the application that we use. So you place an order, a certain person is assigned to that, they go pick up from the restaurant and they deliver it to your house. It's very simple, right? But when you look at Swiggy's sustainability strategy, like, as a large company, as a company which has so many employees, they are responsible to make sure that their strategy is as sustainable as possible. So one way to look at it would be wherever their office is, let's say their headquarters is in Bangalore, what is the amount of area of land they occupy? What is the land use and land use cover change that has happened because of their occupation of that land? How much water do they consume? Do they take it from the bore well? Do they use groundwater? Do they use Bangalore Water Supply Board? How much waste do they produce? Do they give it away to the BBMP collectors, or do they recycle anything in their own operations, in their own building? And what is the emissions that they might have? And emissions can be either greenhouse gas emissions or even air pollution emissions. For example, they might be using electricity. So where are they sourcing their electricity from? Is it from hydroelectric energy that is part of the Karnataka Electricity Board, or are they producing their own using any other alternative because they are a large company? So these are some of the things that Swiggy as a company will consider in their annual report. And I actually encourage everyone to do that after this session today. If you have some time, just go to Google and write Swiggy sustainability or Zomato sustainability or any company. You can say Tata Steel or Mahindra or any large company in India, Dalmia Cement, for example. Because these are large companies, they are obliged to be as sustainable as possible. So in their annual report, they would have written, we will recycle 100 kgs of waste per year, or we will recycle 1,000 liters of water, or we reuse our wastewater for gardening, that sort of thing. So you will know how these companies are taking that. And for these companies, there are advisors, and it's very similar to the role I currently work in, where we sit with those companies and say, okay, this is the footprint you have on the environment, but this is how you should go further in your coming years so that you have least impact on the environment and you're being as friendly as possible. That's one way to look at it. There are definitely laws and policies and regulations in place, much more stronger in Europe and in Australia, lesser in USA, more in Asia now, especially with Singapore taking the lead. So what is happening here is there are laws and regulations that are saying, okay, if you are a company with more than 1,000 employees, you have to recycle your water, or you have to disclose how you're recycling your water. How are you placed with your supply chain? Where are you getting your energy from? Where are you disposing your waste? Why are you not recycling your waste? Why is so many tons of waste going to the landfill? So these are the questions they have to answer as a large company, which is where corporate advisory comes into picture. So the first one that you can see here, advising on eco practices, is the example I gave with Swiggy on helping them understand how they can be a better company. Auditing for improvement. Audit is where you sort of go and check if what they are saying is right. Like if they say, yes, I recycle 1,000 liters of water, you go to the site and you see where is the recycling unit, how are they recycling it, is it happening every month on month, or is it happening, only during the rainy season, or is it happening only for wastewater or even for the municipality water? So you sort of go and be the compliance officer on site and supervise what is happening in practice. Then you measure the carbon footprint, the third point here, which is where you sort of understand, okay, what is your GHG emissions, where are you getting your energy from, and you measure the carbon footprint in terms of, okay, this is the amount of kg of carbon that you are emitting every year as a result of your operations, and that is hampering the environment. This is how you should reduce it, that sort of a thing. So this becomes very technical and calculation specific approach. Green supply chain management is where, say, taking Swiggy example only, their supply chain would be all these delivery people that they have. So they are the ones who are helping Swiggy as a business thrive. So where are they employing those people from? Where are they procuring the talent from? How are they helping them? They have to be given with safety gear for their vehicles. They have to have, especially like currently I live in Delhi, and it becomes really, really cold during, especially December and January. They have to give them with warm wear because they'll be out in the cold delivering products. They have to be make sure they're wearing boots or like shoes instead of open toe slippers. So that's their supply chain, and they are responsible for that because they are employing them. So they have to make sure they are taking care of them. So that's the thinking about the supply chain management, and together at the end of the day, thinking about environmental change and advocating for that. So this is where you sort of sit with companies or with investors and tell, hey, this is your footprint, or this is how you're polluting, this is the amount of resources you're exhausting, but this is how you can improve it, this is how you can make it better. Maybe this is how your competitor is doing. If there is Tata Steel versus JSW, you can say, okay, JSW is recycling its waste, or is using a certain alternative building material, so you should also do that. So this is a sort of advisory and consulting practices that you could do in a private company or a corporation, for example. With that, we come to the end of the pathways that you could choose. As a civil engineer, what can you do to make sure your career has a bit of sustainability in its practices, but you're also helping the environment at the end of the day. Before we move to the next one, which is looking at the scale of impact, either at a city level or site level or international and national, I have another sort of activity for everyone. And for this, I highly encourage everyone to unmute yourselves or even put it in the chat box, like Anita ma'am has suggested. What difference do you think is between these two buildings? Is there a difference at all? If yes, what is the difference? And then we can talk about how that difference is maybe environmental friendly or not environmental friendly. So either unmute yourself, tell the difference, or put it in the chat box. Does anyone think there is no difference? That is also okay. I'd love to hear that. Um, Nothing on the chat yet, so I'll go back to this so you can see the building again. Is there any difference between these buildings? If yes, what is the difference? And there are a lot of differences in my opinion, but if you can name at least one or two, we can start the discussion on that. Come on, guys. We need at least one difference. Who can tell us what that is? We'll wait until we get at least one difference. Anyone? One difference? I'll wait until anyone says.
Okay, lots of things in the chat. Oh, great. How can individual leverage their skills? Um, I'll come to this question, but once we look at the difference between one is a conventional building, the other one looks like it's built using sustainable materials. That's correct. Thank you, Chandan. Another difference, one is eco-friendly, another one is not eco-friendly. Okay. Green building, which is built by using earthy materials, that's true. Difference in construction materials. Rashmi, Ashwini, Sudhakar, great. Hemlata ma'am, construction materials. Absolutely. So one is definitely to do with the construction materials as such. So I'll go back to the presentation so you can see what I what I mean. The one on the left, it utilizes, of course, everything that we've studied as civil engineering graduates. There is cement, there's concrete, there's reinforcement, there are beams, there's everything. And the glasses also, if you can see, which is another thing that I would love to highlight here. They are transparent or translucent glasses, which allows heat and the sort of climate to enter, right? There is also some greenery around the building, which shows a little bit about landscaping, of course. And it's a very typical building that we are all aware of. We've studied about this, and it's also a strong building. So everything's great. On the right hand side, it's a similar size building, but is using bricks, especially, and has lesser concrete, lesser cement. And the windows, if you can see, they are definitely transparent and translucent like the one on the left, but have that additional layer. If you can see on the second floor there, they have additional layer of closure of the microclimatic conditions or the heat or the cold entering in, which is very important. You can also see there are some, I don't want to say gaps, but there are some spaces in the bricks for wind or light or even the heat and the cold to enter. They are in different sizes and across the wall so that there is ventilation as well. So you don't need to be completely enclosed. If you're completely enclosed, you will need an air conditioner, which means you're using a lot more electricity and you're emitting heat outside the building. That means you're adding to the global warming. When there is an additional layer of the glasses as well, you're making sure you're being heat and cold resistant no matter what the climate is outside, so that you can control either if it is cold, you want to close it off and you want to stay warm, or if it is warm, you want to make sure there is ventilation happening. And the main difference is the exposed bricks versus the plastered or conventional building, where you're using less cement, where you are making sure there isn't harmful materials used, and you're polluting less and sort of exerting less pressure on the environment, so to say. There is definitely landscaping here as well, but if you see, it's a different kind of landscaping. On the right hand side, there is grass around the walking area. There is a designated walking area, so you can of course walk on that. But there is grass on the other side, so if there is rain that happens, or if there's some sort of urban flood that happens there, the grass can retain. Grass is known to sort of be strong and retain the water and make sure there's no soil erosion, and make sure it doesn't sort of get seeped too much into the soil. So it will hold that. And there is a hedge at the side as well, that you can see as a strip on the right hand side. So if there's any drainage that has to happen, or you want to divert some of the rainwater, it can go and sort of keep it in the corners and not come in the way of walking or even other transportation. So these are various differences that as and when you spend more time thinking about sustainability, you will start to identify them much more immediately. I think at this point I'd love to also talk about the opinion that some of the members do have in the society, which is the building on the right is ugly and the building on the left is beautiful. That is a fair opinion for sure to have, and I think change is very difficult for us as human beings to accept, especially when you look at psychology perspective. So when something is not plastered, something is so raw and so exposed, or which is the building on the right side, the initial human tendency is to say, God, that's ugly. Why don't you like cover it up? So that is also an opinion that you will come across if you spend time in sustainability in your career. Um, but at the end of the day, it's important to see what is important for the environment, what is producing less pollution, and what is having the least impact. So, if you make a choice to have a career in sustainability, I hope you stand for the right reasons and make the right choice. Thank you for everyone who put your differences in the chat. The reason I spent so much time on this spot the difference is the next slide, which is very, very important point that I want to drive home, especially for civil engineers. So you all know who the person in this caricature is. It's Bill Gates. He is definitely known for, the technology contributions that he's had to the world. But of late, especially in the last 10 years, him and his ex-wife, Melinda Gates, they have been also thinking about global problems. Especially, I think they started off with malaria and water contamination in Africa, and then came on to Asia and what is the water supply here, what are the sanitation systems here. And I had the privilege of getting a grant from the Gates Foundation to work on sustainable development goals in my master's. There is one very interesting book that he's written, which you see on the left side, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. And throughout the book, there are 5 questions that he's laid out. And he's answered all those 5 questions with data, with statistics, with interviews and surveys and research as well. So one of the questions he asks is, what do we do about cement? Now, because cement is so close to us as civil engineers, I thought it's very relevant for us to talk about here. When we talk about sustainability, green energy, renewable resources, we talk a lot about, there are a lot of ACs in the buildings, or there's a lot of heating that Western countries use, which is using up a lot of electricity, or there are a lot of fossil fuel cars or like petrol and diesel cars out there. We need to make it electric and make it more friendly. But we talk very, very less about cement itself. Of course, if you look at the political agenda of it, that's a whole lobby that we will talk about maybe in a separate session about why there are some cement lobbyists who might not want to bring up this question. But as a true environmental warrior, I would say, even if you don't work in it, but you are concerned about environment, you would be an environment warrior. You should be thinking about what do you do about cement. The main reason being it produces the most amount of greenhouse gas emissions than anything else in the world. Like even ACs, even electricity, nothing else produces this much amount of greenhouse gas emissions. Can anyone take a wild guess as to how much of GHG emissions of the total ones that we produce, how much percentage comes from cement? Either just give a random number, that's okay, or put it on the chat, but give it a guess. I'd love to see if you have an idea about it or what you're thinking about it. What's the percentage of greenhouse gas emissions cement production causes in the global world today? Any number. It can be 5%, it can be 90%, it can be 50%. Yeah. Just go ahead. 30%, Rashmi. Good guess. Anyone else? When you think of greenhouse gas emissions, think about the larger picture. There are a lot of vehicles, so there's automobile pollution as well. There's electricity consumption happening by fossil fuel burning, so that's also there. And then, of course, there is heating and cooling by ACs and heaters. But there is also cement production. 35% by Rakesh. Good guess again. One last guess that I will give before we go further. Pooja says 40 and Gauri says 55. Very, very good guesses, guys. Good job. Let me show you what the actual number is. It's very close. It's 31%. And although this doesn't sound like a big number, it's very important for us to consider what else is causing this much. You know, electricity and heating and cooling, it causes only 7% of the total greenhouse gas emissions. Fossil fuel burning causes only 17%. Um, and I think the others as well, like, you know, agriculture and building something also, it produces some emissions. All of that is well under 15%. So 31% is a large number when you compare it with the rest of the things that are creating these greenhouse gas emissions. So as civil engineers, I definitely personally think it is our sort of calling or our responsibility to say, okay, if I am constructing something and I am using cement, what am I doing about it? Or what can I do about it? Either as an individual or as a company or as you want to join the government and do something via policy and regulations, or you want to do something in a global level and join, you know, United Nations Global Compact, or OECD, or other global, you know, World Bank or World Resources Institute. As a person in any scale, what can you do about cement is something I encourage everyone in this audience to think about throughout your career, especially if you're doing construction and utilizing cement as a part of your job. So this leads us to the second pillar that I want to talk about with everyone, which is the scale of impact. So as you would have rightly guessed, at site level, you look at what building materials you use. Um, when you do site selection, sometimes you have a choice in selecting a site, sometimes you don't. But when you do have a choice, how are you selecting the site? Is it coming in the way of, you know, sometimes there's encroachment of roads, sometimes there's encroachment of adjacent sites, sometimes there is wrong land records used in terms of urban planning. It might have been used for a park, but a building has come into place. So these are the things that, as an individual, that you can think of at a site level. What is the surrounding environment? Is it close to a public utility, or is it close to a school? Is it close to a garden? Is it maybe close to a waste landfill site as well? So thinking about just that site, just that, let's say 100 by 100 at the max. Also microclimatic conditions, you know, does it get heated up? Is it closer to the highway, which is why it will have urban heat islands? What's the soil quality like? Can you dig up some of the soil and use that? Like, you know, Ramdor being one of the examples you've learned about yesterday. Can you use that? Or maybe if you can't use it, you give it away to a brick making company and there they sort of compress into bricks. So how do you sort of tackle that site is very, very important. Is there anything else that you would consider at a site level? Because I know site level construction is something that you would have learned very, very thoroughly in the last 4 years, no matter what year you are in engineering. Um, what other site level specifications would you consider if you are constructing a new building, for example? Is there anything else you would think of? All good? Does this cover everything that you think, or is there anything I'm missing? Okay. If there's anything further you want to add, please do feel free to put in the chat. But maybe we go to the next scale of impact, which is the city level. It again sort of relates to the urban planning conversation that I was having with you guys a few minutes ago, which is you look at where is water supply coming from for the city. Let's take Bangalore example. And just last week we've seen so many news articles about water crisis in Bangalore and, you know, all of that. So you might have heard this 100 times already that we take our water from Kaveri, we pump it at least 100 kilometers away. So it needs a certain level of energy for it to get pumped. It needs a certain level of piping and, you know, network that where it has to be carried throughout that journey. And then once it reaches here, it has to again get you know, filtered. You'll have to do a little bit more of chlorination again, and then pump it towards all the other networks that is there in Bangalore. So what is the network looking like? What is the efficiency of it? There are some concepts such as NRW, which is non-revenue water. And that is a huge conversation you will see, especially in BWSSB, for example. They have these things called water adalat. If you get your hands on paper like Deccan Herald or Hindu, you can see usually on page 3 or page 6 on the left-hand side, it will be written, okay, water adalat tomorrow. Usually happen in the area of, I think, Sadashiv Nagar, if I'm not wrong, in Bangalore, where it is open for public and people with water problems, they can come and talk about it. Adalat is a Hindi word which means court, so it's a water court. You can just go and say there's leakage happening, or there is a pipe has been broken, or the drainage system is not working, and they will take those complaints and they will work on it. So BWSMB's biggest conversation is about non-revenue water. And if you just break down that word, you will get to know non-revenue, which is it's not generating revenue. So where is the revenue coming from for BWSSB when they water bills that you would pay as a household? That is one of their major revenue streams, right? But there's a lot of losses that happen along the way. It can be leakage, so it is like material and operations fault. But sometimes it can be some pestering that is happening by some of the citizen groups where they will also be losing some water. So these is where they'll be losing out on their revenue and not making money. So that is a big question in place when you look at city level planning. Similarly, I've written local area plan, municipal authorities. It will be a long conversation if we look at every single one, but in a nutshell, what I want to talk about city level is green lungs as well, which is very important. Bangalore used to be a garden city, not so much anymore, but we do have larger green urban spaces. Where are the trees? What's happening to the deforestation? Some of the flyovers getting constructed. Maybe using timber for construction materials. There's some deforestation happening, or conversion of a land use from a site to a certain building is authorized to be built. So it's important to think of the larger scale. Where does the city get water from? Where are the green lungs or the green spaces in the city? What's happening to the tree cover? What's happening to the waste that we generate? We do have a landfill in Mandur, if I'm not wrong, but that again is really, really far. So there are a lot of trucks that have to do up and down to collect the waste from the households and then go there. So you need transfer stations in between. Where are these transfer stations? What happens there? Is there any recycling happening there? Can it happen? So these are the questions you can think of to think of the scale of impact at a city level. Lastly, there is there's international level as well, but I think national level is something you will understand a little more better. At national level, especially in India, you would know that there is a Paris Agreement, which says that all the United Nations countries, which are around 198 signatories of them, not all the 200 plus countries. So there are 198 countries who have committed, including India, saying we will try our best to make sure that the temperature increase in the world is not beyond 1.5 degrees. So for that, you need climate action plans. So every single country has a climate action plan. Again, if possible, today after this session, or later in the day or later in the week, just type on Google India Climate Action Plan, and you will get a very, very nice document at the end of it. It's very well designed, very well written as well as to what is our climate action plan, what is it that we want to do in 5 years, what is it that we want to do in 10 years, so that the 1.5 degree rise is very well maintained. Then there is something called NDCs, which is nationally determined contributions. As a country, India, what is our contribution to the overall world in reducing the global warming, that sort of a thing. And then there are policies and subsidies. One of the policy and subsidy you might know is electric vehicle purchase, right? Like if you want to buy an electric vehicle today in India, you get it at a very subsidized level. That is because as a country, India thinks we want more and more electric vehicles on the road and we want to reduce the ones on petrol and diesel. So these are the country level specifications or country level considerations that you can get more information on and see if that's the level of work that you would want to do. At international level, it is slightly difficult as an individual to drive a change, of course, but there are, global conferences such as COP29. I think COP28 after Dubai, COP29 is happening somewhere else. I'm not sure where it's happening, but it'll happen at the end of this year. Then there are World Bank conferences where many countries come together, especially Southeast Asian countries, who will come together to say, okay, these are our major global concerns, these are our climate concerns, this is what we are doing, this is what we want to do for that. We will put these laws, we will put these conditions on the companies, or put a restriction on the resources usage, that they cannot use beyond this much water, they cannot emit beyond this much pollution, greenhouse gases, that sort of a thing. So it's very important for you to sort of take a step back and see, okay, do I want to make sure when I construct a building, I want to make sure that it's as eco-friendly as possible at the site, or I want to join hands with a government or an NGO or a private company and be like, okay, what's happening in Bangalore as a city? Or do you want to see at the national level, what is our country doing? What should every state be doing? What is our strength? What's our weaknesses? Or join a world outreach forum and be like, okay, this is what I would like to contribute for all the countries to think about, and what our world should look like in 10 years, or what the future for the next generation should look like. So I'd love to encourage everyone to think about the scale of impact you'd like to have via your career. I'm conscious of time, so I'll jump to the next section. But is there anything anyone wants to share before we go to what workplaces you can look at for your job if you're interested in sustainability as your career? Is there anything anyone wants to share? Anything you read about recently? Anything you want to add to what is on the screen? I'll see if there's anything on the chat. Sorry, I'm seeing these messages now. So there's energy efficiency and accessibility. Sudhakar, Rashmi, would you like to tell us what you meant by accessibility or energy efficiency? Go ahead. Anything you want to add to that? I didn't know civil engineering students were so shy. We were not so shy in our batch in 2016. Looks like you've become more shy now. I hope you are able to freely express what you have in mind in the next one. Right. There's only one more slide, so I'll not take a lot of your time for the next one, which is potential workplaces. And I'm telling this more from the perspective of a senior, if possible, than anything else, because 2016 was what, 8 years ago. 8 years ago, when I finished my graduation at MVIT, I felt like I had all the knowledge I wanted. I had all the foundation. I had access to the resources. There were, all the teachers who were still willing to give more guidance and support. But I didn't know where to look for a job in Bangalore. And I am from Bangalore, and I didn't want to go outside the city at that point. So I was like, okay, I want to work in sustainability, but where do I go in the city? Like, nobody's advertising for sustainability then. It's becoming more and more popular now than what it was 8 years ago. So hopefully, if you are interested in sustainability and you also have this question that I had 8 years ago, that, okay, where do I get a job to work on this and learn more? I hope this slide helps you with that. So firstly, I've listed the ones in Bangalore. especially the ones who are more institutional in their thinking. So they are not private companies. They are more on the ground. They are more impactful in their outreach, and they work with like real people. So it's very much the real change that you would maybe interested in if you want to look for a job in Bangalore. First one is Karnataka State Natural Disaster Monitoring Center. Again, like I mentioned, Shivana sir had taken all of us in our seventh semester for a day at their office. It's in Yalahanka, and very very fortunately, I ended up doing my eighth semester project with them on watershed assessment. So this is where you would sort of be a little more closer to research and be a little more closer to spatial planning, because they work very much on what's the rainfall that happens, what's the soil quality, soil erosion, um, urban floods potential, that sort of a thing. And I think quite a few students later as well did some projects there. So this is definitely a place worth considering if you would like to be more hands-on with your analysis and see some real on-the-ground changes and be closer to some of the government officials as well, so that you will see something actually translating into action. So it's not just maps on your computers and then nobody sees it, but you will make sure the people in charge are having access to the solutions that you want to propose. Similarly, there's IISE. That's a separate bullet that I should have mentioned there. Sorry about that. So IISE is in Institute of Science that you might know already. So there as well, it's very research heavy. Very very specific sites will be chosen where you will work very closely with professors there. Um, Either a research grant is where you will be working on, or help with solving a particular problem that Bangalore is facing, maybe traffic, maybe um, again anything to do with landscaping, that sort of thing. Um, UNSDSN, it's not Bangalore specific. It is definitely at all levels, but in Bangalore they do have a lot of open positions that I saw very recently. It's Sustainable Development Solutions Network, so they do have project officers, program managers positions open, where you talk about a particular issue that Bangalore as a city is facing, and you work with the local organizations or NGOs and present your findings to the UN level, so that they will help with the funding and they will help with the monitoring of it. So your impact is happening at the city level, but the guidance or the resources is coming from the national or the international level. So that again is a very good combination for you to look at. The rest of the things, Biome, Arghyam, Hasiru Dala, Sahas, these have their own specific focuses. They are founded by Bangaloreans, so the people who work there are from the city. They know the city really well, and they are very very passionate about making the city more environment friendly. So Biome works in construction materials. Arghyam works in rainwater harvesting and water conservation. Hasiru Dala works in waste generation. So by you know wet waste versus dry waste, and organic waste versus non-organic waste, hazardous waste, non-hazardous waste, that sort of a thing. And Sahas works specifically on e-waste, because there's a lot of batteries and phones and computers and that sort of a thing, especially Bangalore being an IT industry hub. So e-waste recycling and e-waste disposal, especially in a very responsible manner, is important. So these are niche, specific focus area led organizations that you can look at if you want to look at a job in Bangalore. But if you go towards more, construction materials, construction management, and site specific work outside of Bangalore and throughout the country, these are the organizations that you can look at. These are a little more competitive, so you would not be working on the ground. It might be like you're working, it might be a desk job where you are consulting remotely or visiting the site maybe only once in a month or twice in a month, but they will have projects all over the country. So if you would like to work at a different place as well outside Bangalore, this is definitely where you should look at. Especially, you would know of L&T more than anything, but Atkins, WSP, Arup, these are the ones with the latest technology. These are the ones with great skill sets. They have great clients and large portfolio projects that you will definitely benefit from if construction management and construction specific work is what you're interested in. Thirdly, there is, advisory and consulting, which is the world that I come from, where you can work with Big Four. Big Four, you might know, is the four companies: EY, Ernst and Young, KPMG, PwC, and Deloitte. So all four of them are accounting firms majorly, but they also have consulting and advisory services. To give you a very practical example, Swachh Bharat Mission Gramin, which is rural Swachh Bharat Mission in Karnataka, they will have consultants by any of these big four. And when I was working back in 2020, it was KPMG. So KPMG will sit with these district collectors, district magistrates, assistant civil engineers, or PWD colleagues. They will sit with all of these people to say, okay, this is the site you have, this is how you should do it. I will drop the map for you, or I will draw the target roadmap for you, that sort of a thing. So that's where you will get to coordinate with the people who are actually doing the on-ground work, but you're not employed with them, you're employed with a private company. So you're sort of partnering up in the work that you're doing. There's also similar consulting firms. Mott McDonald, again, is very, very popular in India, which works on similar things. World Resources Institute, again, although it is a global organization, in Bangalore especially, they have an office in Jayanagar, and they have offices all over the country as well, where they work very closely with the government in implementing a lot of environmentally friendly programs. Janagraha, again, you might have heard, they are based in Shivaji Nagar in Bangalore, and they work on more of citizen action, flyover construction, or deforestation, or urban forestry, rainwater harvesting, lake restoration, that sort of a thing. So they are very active as well. They do have a focus in Bangalore, but again, they have a presence all over South India. So if you're looking at outside Bangalore as well, this is the place to go. Lastly, I think these are more on policy. So not so much on, you won't be working with construction materials, or you won't be working on site specific stuff. But when you work with, NEERI or EcoWatch or Center for Science and Environment, these are the ones who sort of control what the policy or regulation should be. They will say, okay, this is the water quality that is acceptable for drinking. This is the wastewater quality that is acceptable for discharge in oceans. Or this amount of waste is okay, but beyond that, you have to recycle. Or if you are disposing your e-waste, you have to dispose it on only these sites. So you're sort of laying out the rules that everyone should follow. So you're deciding in every state what should be the rules, what is the penalty for it, how to supervise it, how to monitor it. So you're sort of controlling how everyone else should follow the rules. So if you're interested in that, then the Organizations on the Right is a place that you can possibly look for. There are many more beyond this. I've tried to put the maximum possible on one slide, but there are lots more that you will find in your research, and I'm more than happy to be there to guide if possible, if you would like. I'm leaving my email and LinkedIn here. I'll share this presentation with everyone. But if you'd like more information, I'm more than happy to give it as well. With that, I'll pause. I know I've taken a long time. Is there anything you'd like me to clarify? Any question you want to ask? Anything you want to add? This is the last chance. I won't be able to say, come on, guys, unmute yourselves. I won't be able to say that again. So if possible, please do share your thoughts. What did you think? Do you agree? Do you have anything else that you've read? Do you have a different approach? Or does sustainability not excite you? Anything is okay. So let's open it up, at least last 5 minutes, open it up for conversation. I know there was a question before. How can individuals leverage their skills and expertise to transition into industry? Yeah, I think it's more to do with joining some of the groups, like for example, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is becoming a very good resource these days, where there are several groups. There is a group for civil engineers, there's a group for environmental professionals. You can join those groups, have these discussions with the networks there, see what they are working in, just connect with the individuals, and you will know what skills they are doing. I hope that answers that question. But is there anything, last 3 minutes, feedback link? What is the feedback link about? Can anyone?
We will be posting the feedback link after the session.
Okay. So sorry, I didn't understand. Thank you. 3 minutes, guys. Any thoughts, any questions, any opinions that you would like to share? When we started off the session, we were at 60 and we are 80 now, which is amazing. I'm really happy to have 80 people in this call. But I'd love at least 8 people, which is 10% of the population here, to share anything that you felt during the session, or anything you want to add, anything you want to disagree with.
Participants, any questions?
Anupama, I will